Hi guys, Asimo here and welcome to the Manifesto of Balance. The Balance Manifesto for PoE Ultimatum League is out and I'm gonna be taking a fresh look at it. I have not read it or seen it before because it just has been released. So let's see what they're saying, let's see what's changing and what are their thoughts and directions with the balance of the game. So alongside New League, we aim to make balance changes, blood theme skills, also make changes to Atlas passives, blah blah blah. Okay. Balance changes related to the new life costing skills. So low life, low mana and low energy shield now all count as being on 50% or below. So being on 50% counts as well. This is pretty important distinction to know. Like so if you are at 50% or below, you are counted as low life. So this is really nice. Low life, low mana and low energy are basically getting more flexibility. So now you don't need to necessarily reserve as much mana life or energy shield. I don't know. Can you reserve energy shield somehow? I don't know how to do that, but maybe in the future we'll be able to do that, or maybe some skills actually count being at low energy shield. But anyway, you can spend mana to be on low, like spend mana with like EB. This new threshold is both a bit more obvious at a first glance and is large enough value that the player could survive for a long time on low life. Sure, and that's because of the new skills that they're introducing. We've made similar changes to the assassins. Oh, wait a minute. So as a result, certain skills, passives and items have been rebalanced to compensate. For example, the punishment curse effect that causes enemies to take more damage while on low life has been reduced in power as it now takes effect for a larger portion of the monster's life. Okay, makes sense. So it's a little bit reduced in power. So assassin stuff and infernal mantle and replica last resort. Okay, so skills have been rebalanced to accommodate for that change. Okay. The blood magic support gem has been split into 2 gems. We already talked about that in the reveal. There are a small number of new passive clusters on the passive skill tree for generic physical damage as well as physical damage over time multiplier to better support the new skills. That's pretty good. The fizz damage over time multiplier is gonna be massive, and this basically is gonna mean that the corrupted blood build is probably gonna be ridiculous with the amount of scaling currently that you have. Like just adding this on top of a bleed build, on top of like a good Crimson Dance build, is gonna be absolutely ridiculous. So seems like the Crimson blood, like Crimson Dance corrupted blood, is gonna be incredibly strong. These include gladiators, gratuitous violence passive. Okay, not all bleed related passives and modifiers on items have been changed, so a full bleed invested build and a build using both bleeding and corrupted won't always look the same. Okay, that makes sense, and but I'm sure there will be enough like generic damage over time cluster jewels, for example, that you can use. Like there is like generic damage over time multiplier cluster jewel that you can use that will apply to both the corrupted blood and the bleeding, so you can basically essentially spend all of your passives on the corrupted blood and bleeding, which is like generic physical damage over time or damage over time, and make this insane. Corrupted blood now never counts as bleeding damage, so reductions to bleeding damage no longer take effect. The Staunching Flask modifier and Pathfinder Master Surgeon notable now state that they apply to both bleeding and corrupted blood. Okay, so they did not nerf the Staunching Flask or the Pathfinder. Now it basically removes both. Corrupted Blood's damage has been rebalanced so it's more consistent between the sources. So specific monsters that had very high Corrupted Blood damage will no longer be as strong, while others that dealt almost no damage will be dealing a more noticeable amount. Okay, that seems overall better. More predictable damage is, I think, better for the game. Blade Storm now has a multiplier to bleeding damage and blood stance. Blade Storm. Oh, okay. Similar to the multiplier on Lacerate. So Blade Storm leveling maybe is gonna be actually better now with the corrupting blood thing, depending on the level that it's available on. Similar to Lacerate, to enable bleeding builds on the blood theme skill. The Elder Influenced weapon modifiers that grant a chance to poison or bleeds inflicted with this weapon deal 100% more damage have been removed. In their place, Elder Influenced weapons can now roll a new local poison or bleed damage over time modifier. The double damage chance modifiers were too multiplicatively powerful for those builds, providing power that only the modifier granted, so they've been changed to an effect that is additive with other bleed poison damage multipliers. Okay, so that makes perfect sense. Too many multipliers, too many exponential ways of scaling, and all of that tied to Elder Weapon, so you couldn't play without an Elder Weapon on a bleed build because that would just mean you're gimping yourself too hard. I think that's a good change. That's a solid nerf to compensate. It's a pretty big nerf to compensate for that change. However, there are still similar mods that exist outside of Elder. I think like Pathfinder has one or something, but maybe that's just for the chaos damage for poison. Yeah, I think that's just for poison. So Pathfinder buffs in a way. The way skills specify cost has been refactored. Now skills specify what resource they use. Consequently, stats can specifically specify whether they affect all costs, reservations, or some combination. Okay. So the mana cost versus life cost versus all skill cost is gonna be kind of modified, right? So that now as you're spending, if it's something says spend mana, you actually have to spend mana unless you transform that spending mana into spending life. But yeah, okay, so it's like more clarity because they're doing a lot of like spending life on skills, so that there can be like modifiers on passive skill tree or gems that reduce or increase the cost of the skill regardless if it uses life or mana. So now that had to be changed simply as a consequence of adding a lot of like ways of spending life instead of mana on the base gem without using blood magic, right? Because now you can actually spend life instead of mana for skills without using blood magic. So there is no the conversion is not happening, so the wording has to be different. Okay, I understand that and makes perfect sense. As a major benefit of these changes, reservation skills no longer have an associated cost by default. What? Reservation skills no longer have an associated cost by default, so you don't need the current mana available to reserve a skill. Oh, okay, that's good. Like that's really good. So you can still reserve an aura without having to like press a like mana flask when you unreserve aura to change aura. Okay, so that's quality of life change. That's very nice. I like that. And also like, yeah, whenever you reserved life on no life character and you had no life regen, you'd have to like use life potion, like life flask, in order to reserve the life again. So now that means it doesn't have a cost, it just has a reservation, it's separate from it. Okay, that's a nice change. Because of this, mind skills now have both a mana cost and a mana reservation. They always had that though. This means that both modifiers and to cost and reservation both affect their appropriate part of mind cost. So Indigo no longer provides spell damage without affecting mind cost at all. Indigo minor nerf. That's nice, I guess, right? Indigo minor nerf. That was a very overpowered build, so that's good. Atlas passive balance. We made a series of changes to Atlas passives for a variety of reasons. Certain modifiers provided more rewards than the average rewards, of course, yeah. So some of the obvious ones: high value targets, diplomatic escort. Okay, so the Valdos, right? Which one was high value targets? Was it also Harbinger? Was it both Harbinger? While others are more subtle, like Seance, which effectively added so much item quantity to areas that it would subtly boosting core draws. Like maps, more than single Atlas mechanic should. Okay. Certain modifiers provided fewer rewards. Let me check these. So Seance, which one is that? Okay, so Seance is up to 20 rare monsters in areas are possessed and their minions are touched. Okay, nobody was really farming this area. Was that really busted? I mean, okay, did they really think that was broken? And then is high value targets this one or is this one? Emblematic, war, high value targets. Legions in areas contain 3 additional surgeons and legion surgeons in areas. So this one was not the emblematic, really? High value targets is the one they are thinking is too powerful. Okay, that's really interesting. It seems like this region is still gonna be good. I mean, this does scale with the number of legions you're putting in, but then again, that would be expected, right? The more you invest, the more you get out of it. So seems like you're less incentivized to invest more, which kind of sounds like the opposite of what they should be doing. But okay. Certain modifiers provided fewer rewards than the standard ones and have been increased, so that their chance of rewards increased. For example, the rewards from the invasion exotic goods notable have been improved. So this one is what? Exotic goods. That's here. That is invasion bosses drop one additional valuable item. Yeah, that sounds like horrible node. Although it's very, very generic. So if you're not doing abysses, or if you're not doing beasts, then there's nothing else to pick, right? But yeah, and this is a pretty bad one. So that's actually, it makes sense that this is improved. Certain effects made more sense with grouped together, like the incursion passive saying all monsters and incursions are at least magic, has been moved off Glenna Cairns onto the existing time dilation modifier on Lex Ajoris. So Lex Ajoris is now completely focused on having more rewarding individual incursion runs, and Glenna Cairns focuses on creating the best possible temple. Wait, that's the opposite. I mean, okay, kind of, but you have to still do Lex Ajoris to create your temples, right? I mean, Lex Ajoris is where you want to run. So Lex Ajoris, by the way, what? So incursion architects drop one additional rare item. Okay, so this is like buffing incurred. Oh my god, this region is nuts. This region is insane. Like this already was like the best legion to start with, at least in my opinion. I started with this, that's where I made my headhunter currency. But this seems like a massive buff actually for this. And also a massive buff to running like T17 burial chambers, but I'm sure the burial chambers will be moved now to some other region. But this would be insane if burial chambers were still here. Actually, no matter what will be here, like the if there's like a good T16 map, which you can run as T17 in this region, that's gonna be still insane for like 100% delirious maps for farming something like cluster jewels and stuff, which some of them can be extremely expensive on an 84 base. Okay, Lex Ajoris, blah blah. A ritual has been added to Haywork Hamlet with 2 notables available. It replaces Beyond There. Power Hungry no longer exists, and the Pure Demon notable has been moved to Glenna Cairns at a slightly lower value. As the pun was too good not to keep. Okay, so let's see. Haywork Hamlet has had a ritual. So this region now has. Let me close these. This region now has a ritual instead of these Power Hungry and the Pure Demon, right? So these, this is changed, okay. So this doesn't exist here. So this region is just for harvest now. This region is like just for harvest farming now. And also June, like Betrayal. You'll notice I have very, very weird passives in here, but that's actually like the best passives for building your syndicate safe houses. So that's interesting. So now the Beyond, the Power Hungry no longer exists, and the Pure Demon has been moved to Glenna Cairns. So the Pure Demon is rare Beyond monsters have 35% chance to drop an additional basic currency item, so it's going to be lower. Glenna Cairns. So instead of the cultural advancement, we now get like an offshoot here. Like it's going to be like one small and one big that will give you the Pure Demon, which makes this region even better. It makes this region even better because the incursion monsters in areas are at least magic. It did increase your like drops and experience a little bit, but it didn't increase the number of monsters really. So the quantity of the currency you're going to be dropping is still better. So this region is even stronger now. So something like T2 tower farming that happened in this region is actually getting buffed, which is ridiculous. And like, does nobody at GGG play? Like the game? Like, they don't do 100% delirious maps? Like nobody, anybody? Like all the changes that they're talking about are buffing like the 2 strongest like delirium regions. Like this one is like now nerfed, right? This one is now nerfed, but now instead they're buffing this one, and this one is very, very weird. But we'll see what other changes. We'll see how the maps are moved around, because maybe they'll put like horrible maps in there and that would justify it, I guess, right? But I think there'll still be pretty good maps there to do something there. Val skills. We've made balance pass on damaging Val skills, making them a more interesting choice relative to the Val skills that provide ongoing buffs. We want damaging Val skills in particular to have more reasons to be used by a larger variety of builds. I'm probably gonna make like a pure Val skill build next league as well, like a Pathfinder with the flasks. The uptime of our Val skills have been improved via various means, not memes. Soul generation on unique monsters has been increased to 6 souls per 2% life lost with 1 second cooldown. This is twice as many souls as before. Damaging Val skills have had their soul gain prevention times lowered relative to the duration of the Val skill. That's nice. The soul gain prevention times lowered means yeah, we can hit, like, we can get it to very low. Val skills that don't have a duration or ongoing effect of soul gain prevention time is usually just 1 second. So 1 second soul gain prevention, and you can cut it in half easily, like just like flask or something. So that's actually very, very interesting. And I'm gonna try to shoot for like 100% reduced soul gain prevention duration, so that we can just spam these. Reduce the vol, because as long as you can do, if you can reduce this to 0, right? If you can have like 100% reduced soul gain prevention time, and you can deal 2% of life. Oh wow, but this has also its own cooldown, I guess. So you can cast it once per second, as long as you're dealing 2% life at least. Val skills like once per second. This could be good for like an earthquake. Like you can do perma earthquake on, like maybe we can do something like that, like Pathfinder earthquake, and just like permanent. That would be interesting, like a permanent Val earthquake Pathfinder, or permanent what's it called, cold snap. Permanent Val cold snap Pathfinder, just running with the aura around you all the time. A balance pass has been made on damaging Val skills. Note that all classes, in all cases, these have been buffs except for Val Righteous Fire, which now provides less spell damage. Okay, that's good. Nerf to Val RF because it's just pointless. It's just a multiplier for other skills, so it doesn't help the Righteous Fire or Val Righteous Fire that much. We felt it was too easy for any spellcaster to use this skill to get significantly more spell damage for a long duration with very little downside. Correct. Sometimes you'd kill yourself with it, but in softcore you don't care that much. And fire damage over time aspect has been increased, keeping this an attractive option for builds focusing on burning damage. Okay, that sounds good. We have introduced several new unique items and made adjustments to existing ones to either give higher uptime of Val skills at some cost, or allow you to utilize Val skills more easily on builds that struggle to fit them in. Yo, here's what I think they might be adding. The new skills, actually the blood skills, might have a Val version as well. They didn't show it, but it seems like maybe they will have it. Either way, I'm really tempted to make like a Val skill now, like a pure Val build, like a Pathfinder with like just permanent uptime of a Val skill around. But okay, now let's go to the juicy stuff, which is the skill balance changes. We've made balance passes on a large variety of skills that are performing above acceptable power levels, either through damage, speed of clearing content, or defensive benefits. These include Blade Vortex, very, very understandable. Blade Blast, very, very understandable. Toxic Rain. I did not expect them to actually nerf Toxic Rain, but that's fine. It's perfectly fine. Toxic Rain is definitely can still be fine after the nerf, so it's gonna be still probably fine. General's Cry with channeled skills, never used that, so I have no idea. Seismic Cry, really? Carrion Golem, that's very nice. And Vitality, obviously, yeah, Vitality deserved a slap as well. Frostbomb and Wave of Conviction have had their explosion value lowers, as these skills provided too large of an elemental resistance reduction compared to other mechanics that have higher investment or penalties against bosses. Okay, so I would expect them to be 15 now, I guess. Because other sources of exposure are... Oh, wait a minute. But the fire one is not changed. What's the fire one called? Yo, what's the fire one called? There is a skill that they are not addressing that gives you fire exposure, and it's still, so that's gonna be still the only one for 25%. So I guess Elementalist will use that now. It's exposure. Which one was it? Scorching Ray, right? Yeah, fire exposure. Yes, Scorching Ray is still gonna do 25% fire exposure. So as an elementalist, Scorching Ray is becoming now a more interesting option, because everything else now applies lower exposure. As you can see, like Frost Bomb has 25, Wave of Conviction has 25, and Scorching Ray has 25. But Scorching Ray is not getting touched while these are getting nerfed. So they might get nerfed to 20%, they might get nerfed to 15%. Probably not gonna get nerfed to 10 because then they're pointless and useless and you'll never use them. But yeah, if they're 15 or 20, they're still gonna be fine. But yeah, Scorching Ray buffs in comparison to that. Flesh and Stone that has 35% mana reservation from 25. The defensive power, okay, makes sense. It was just like everybody would get it, and it was very, very low reservation. Okay, that makes sense. Vigilant Strike and its threshold jewel, the Vigil, have changed how they handle Fortify duration, and the duration is granted so that the Vigil doesn't result in a very long duration of Fortify effect. Oh, Fortify nerfs for non-melee, instead granting a shorter Fortify duration than a high-level Vigilant Strike. Vigilant Strike based Fortify duration now scales with gem level rather than through an increased Fortify duration stat. Previously, players could gain 30 seconds of Fortify from 2 sockets and a single jewel, which was far too cheap for defensive power offered. Okay, so that is nerfed. So that's another nerf for like minor builds, for non-melee builds basically are getting nerfed Fortify, while melee builds still have just as strong of a Fortify as before. Divergent Berserk alternate quality now 4 times less. 4 times less. So that is a massive nerf. A massive nerf. It's still what, 20? It's still what? No, it's 5% now, right? It's 5% from 20. But you could buff it from other stuff. So you used to be able to go to up to like 40-50%. So now that's gonna be like 10% more spell damage. So it's still nice, but it's not that much. It's basically about as good as Unnerve or Intimate. No, yeah, just like an Unnerve type of a multiplier. Okay, so that's big nerf. Very, very expected. Like everybody knew this was gonna get nerfed. General balance changes on all nerfs. Quivers and casters offhands. What? Critical strike chance multiplier, damage over time multiplier, and chain modifiers on quivers now only apply to attacks or bow skills. Wait, chain modifiers? No! What the fuck? Nobody was using that. Why do you gotta nerf arc? Why do you nerf arc single target of all things? Of all things, they're nerfing arc single target. Like that was just an idea in my head. Nobody even played that. And they're nerfing that. Fuck off with the chain nerf. That's so annoying. I hate that change. Like I'm fine with all of this, but the chain thing, fuck that. Only apply to attacks or bow skills. The Signal Fire and Regal Schools unique quivers also have had their physical damage added as fire, and projectiles fork modifiers changed to be with attacks only. So massive nerfs. This is like one of the biggest nerfs we've ever seen in the game. Like what the fuck? This is a crazy nerf. This is just an insane nerf. Like the Signal Fire, right? And all of these things for BV, while also BV being nerfed, is a massive nerf. Like if you haven't played the builds that use these things, you have no idea. This is massive difference. The dot multi as well. This is gonna also hurt ED Contagion. That's crazy. So all of these are getting nerfed, and yeah, other like crit multi. Huh. That's a massive nerf. That's a big deal. Like so many builds are gonna suffer because of that. So many builds, like builds that scale the level of the gems by having a bow as your 6th link with a bunch of like +2 levels of gems, and then you have like crit multi or like damage over time multiplier and stuff like that on the quiver. That's a massive nerf. The only thing I hate about this is the chain, because the only chain modifiers is on a corruption, which is like super rare to get, and the only spell that cares about that is arc, which is like, who cares? Like, why do you nerf that? Nobody plays this even. So that is really annoying me. This one little thing, but everything else I'm fine with, I guess. Spells are overpowered, and these builds are like the strongest, so it makes sense that this would be nerfed. Bows with a quiver could outclass many caster weapons. I mean, it is a caster weapon, kind of. It was. For a variety of builds, so this change brings total offensive power to a more reasonable balance without removing the option entirely. kinda is removing the option, but whatever. Also makes a lot more thematic sense. Sure, I mean, if you wanna do that. I liked that this was in, like an option, but I guess we have to do other stuff now. I guess it's gonna be Path of Scepters now. Path of +2 Scepters. Physical explosion body armors. Influence and synthesis modifiers that caused... Wait, influence and synthesis. Okay, so both. Modifiers that cause the explode will no longer have a 100% chance to apply. The replacement modifiers grant enemies you kill have a chance to explode, dealing a 10th of their life as physical damage. So more damage. With a lower tier influence mod being introduced that has a lower chance. This keeps the mechanic and opens up the possibility of stacking explode chance with high investment, but it will no longer reliably wipe out packs of monsters through a chain reaction of explosions. Well, yeah, it will if you stack enough of it, I guess, right? So you can stack this. You can also stack the yeah, okay, so it makes sense. You need to invest more, right? So ideally you'd have, like, you know, 2 explodey weapons and explode chest, and that gives you a 100% chance, for example, right? So you can still do that when you have a bigger investment. So explodey chest nerf. This was like very long overdue. Explodey was broken as hell. So yeah, BV just got shit on in this patch. BV is on suicide watch. Like, BV got destroyed. Like, BV is just like in the gutters now. Just completely destroyed by all of these changes. The bow and quiver changes, like the quiver changes, the signal fire change, BV nerfed overall as well, like just individually. The explode nerfed, like massive nerfs. So that's crazy. Base life of all harvest monsters have been reduced. What? But the harvest machinery gives monsters 100% extra increase to life on average. What? What is harvest machinery? The intention is no difficulty change in harvest fights, but harvest monsters created with desecrate skill have life values more in line with other desecratable monsters in the game. This is to address the corpse explosion builds getting a significant damage boost from having specters of specific harvest monsters. Okay, alright, that makes sense. So it's like no change except for the Spectre Detonate Dead thing. Okay, cool. So Detonate Dead nerf, cool. Hexproof. Modifiers that allow your hexes to affect hexproof enemies, such as Cospriest, will no longer allow your hexes to affect yourself while you have hexproof, as you are not your own enemy. What does it say? Enemies? Enemies? Okay. Self-curse dead. Self-curse has been officially killed. Self-curse has been officially removed. Self-curse is gone. What the fuck? That's a massive change. How can they do that in the same patch that they're like... Well, it's been fun while it lasted. I'm happy I played it for the last 2 leagues because now it's not gonna be a thing anymore. To explain to those of you that don't understand this, if you are playing a self-curse headhunter build, that means you're cursing yourself with your own reflected curse, right, with temporal chains that have massively increased effect through your passives, and you're making the duration of the buffs massively extended, right? So you're extending the buffs on yourself. Look, but this just shows that they didn't understand the build. This just shows that they tried to nerf it but didn't know how. That's so disappointing. Like, fine, the nerf is fine. It's just like, it just shows that they don't play the game again. Like, hexproof thing, like, because they tried to nerf the... They tried to destroy the self-curse headhunter build, right? They tried it before. They made it so that now that you steal hextouch, like if you steal like hexproof buff from a monster with the headhunter, it will remove the already existing curses on you, right? Not just like it will stop you from getting new ones, it will actually remove the ones you already have. And so people got around that by using either Occultist or the Cospriest chest, right? And that was like a very obvious thing that everybody immediately, like who played the build, knew to do. And now they're like, oh, we oh these things as well, huh? Okay, fine. Like it just shows that they don't play the game at that level. Which is kind of disappointing. Like I wish GGG like paid someone like a consultant, like as a consultant, like find some, like, I don't know, it doesn't have to be content creator, but like maybe someone who's like well spoken, okay, who knows the game, who plays at a high level, who does like juicer stuff, and like who does 100% delirious maps with the meta builds. Like pay them a little bit of a consulting fee, talk to them for a few hours about the changes that you want to do, and they will immediately tell you like, you're wrong about that, this doesn't work, this works differently, this works like that, because they seem to like not understand how things work, and they need like 5 leagues to change something finally that they originally intended to change, right? So okay, whatever. Well, this nerf is fine. It's the dead build is dead. Poison Sextant. The Sextant modifier, which grants player increased damage and movement speed, has been removed. Okay, so Poison Sextant removed. Nice. To partially compensate, as we believe self-poison is an interesting playstyle, we have added a new unique item that retains the damage and modifier speed per poison stats. However, these stats will now be capped at a specific value. Okay, so they will make it a playstyle, but you cannot anymore abuse these poison sextants. So self-poison gone, self-curse gone, BV destroyed. A lot of spell builds are like gutted with the changes. Very, very interesting, like super nerfs. Okay, fractured fossils and beast splitting. Splitting an item through beastcraft now applies a split tag similar to mirrored. Okay. Items that have fractured fossils used on them also gain the split tag. Split items cannot be split mirrored again and cannot have imprints made of them or applied to them. Okay, so that's that. They talked about that. Happy about that change, because beast farming botters things is not good for the game. That's cool. Atlas Mission Sustain. We've removed the bonus mission chance from awakening bonus objectives, as Atlas passives combined with this bonus and other mechanics are resulting in almost endless supply of missions. We've decided to keep the Atlas passives at full strength and remove the awakening objective bonus, so the player has the choice to invest in more Atlas missions if they desire. Yes, Watchstones are the thing that makes the Atlas missions stack as much, not the Atlas passives or anything else. It's the fucking Watchstones, guys. Again, they need to talk to someone who actually plays the game. Please talk to someone who actually plays the game. But fine, whatever. It's like, nothing changes because Watchstones, you know. Delirium item quantity and rarity. We've lowered and standardized the amount of item quantity and rarity granted by Delirium Fog. So they now have, so they now give up to double the inbuilt item rarity of monsters and up to 50% of the item quantity of monsters. This now caps out at a maximum depth rather than 50% depth, as was previously the case. Wait, what? Lowered and standardized the amount of quantity and rarity granted by Delirium Fog. But does it have to do with like does it affect both the mirror or the orbs? Like both mirror and orbs, or one of them? Because this sounds like only affects the fog, right? So they now give up to double the inbuilt rarity of monsters and up to 50% of quantity. So the Delirium Fog, as it progresses, I guess, so like the mirror one can give you up to double rarity and 50% extra quantity. This now caps out at maximum depth rather than at 50% depth. Okay, so you need to progress further. So that's just a nerf to the Delirium Fog, I guess. Nerf to the Delirium Fog. So the deeper you go, right? Like the deeper you go, further away from the mirror you go, you have to actually go to the maximum, like as far as is humanly possible to get this whole value, instead of halfway through. So the second half of the map will not be fully buffed, it will just keep gaining power as you go further. So it makes sense to keep going further and you get more and more benefit from that, I guess. But they lowered the amount of quantity and rarity, so it's actually just purely nerfed, just like 100% nerfed. The Delirium Mirror is super nerfed in terms of the rarity and quantity. Okay, interesting. Nobody was using that. I mean, I guess there will be Delirium Mirror in the Zana map device. I guess this tells me that. This tells me Zana map device will have Delirium this league. That's interesting. Passive tree changes. We are wary about how accessible normally scarce AoE. What? We are wary about how accessible normally scarce stats such as area of effect, skill effect duration, and aura effect and projectile speed are on cluster jewel notables, given you can stack multiple of the same notables on a passive skill tree. As a result, we have made small numerical nerfs to several cluster jewel notables that grant the above stats. Okay, so cluster jewels are getting nerfed in terms of AoE. Man, there's so much AoE on cluster jewels. Skill effect duration, okay, so I guess that's fair because they're very, very powerful. Aura effect is getting nerfed again? Aura stacker is getting nerfed again? Like again? Okay, they just don't know how to kill the build, I guess. Like what this tells me, this change and hexproof change, is that they actually don't know how to kill the build. Like they actually don't know how to do it, and they have to like do it over like multiple patches. Like if they want to kill the build, just kill the build, you know? I just make the mechanic not work that everybody is abusing, and not just like, oh, we'll nerf it slightly. Okay, so now the richer and richer people only can do it. Like that doesn't do what you want it to do, I guess. So you have to do it again, and then why bother doing that? I don't know. Projectile speed. Who the fuck cares about projectile speed that much? Also like on cluster jewel notables. As a relatively minor ascendancy change, Pain Reaver has been replaced with a new passive skill on the Berserker, providing defensive benefits once you lose life from an enemy hit. What? It is designed as a... which one is that? Berserker... Let's see. Pain Reaver. Attack damage leached as life, mana, increased attack speed if you've been hit recently, increased maximum total recovery per second. What does that have to do with it? What does that have to do with like AoE, projectile, what? Defensive benefits once you lose life from an enemy hit. So if you get hit and lose life, as in you don't mitigate the 100% of it, you get some defensive bonuses. Granting faster leech rate from Pain Reaver more easily, but the effects of Berserker Flawless Savagery no longer limited to attacks, and the small passive apply 10% increased physical damage instead, increased physical damage with attacks. Okay, so that applies to the corruption stuff and the corruption spells. They want Berserker to be played with it. Okay. Immortal Ambition Keystone's life leech effects recover energy shield instead while on full life. Okay, Immortal Ambition. Okay. Energy shield starts at 0, cannot regenerate, lose 5 energy per second. Okay, so this is like the belt, right? This is okay, it's exactly like Soul Tether. Okay, so this is like the Soul Tether, and Immortal Ambition no longer. This is so confusing. Immortal Ambition's Keystone's life leech effects recover energy shield instead while on full life. Wasn't it doing that already? Life leech effects are not removed at full life. Life leech effects recover energy shield instead while in full life. That's what it was doing, right? Oh my fucking god. This is the name. This is a name of a stat. This whole thing is a name of a modifier. Jesus Christ. That's a mouthful. This stat, this one thing, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 words, okay, is now limited by maximum total energy shield recovery from leech instead of maximum total life. Oh, okay, so it's a nerf. Okay, just say nerf to the Soul Tether, okay? Combined with Corrupted Soul, Keystone and powerful recovery source of leech is provided too great of an increase to a character recovery. Yeah, but do they change that on the item though? Not sure, we'll see. Corrupted Soul Keystone now causes you to gain 15% of maximum life as maximum energy shield from 20. That was already shit. I don't know why people were using that. That was already bad. The Keystone allowed life-based characters to get large amounts of energy shield very easily, while the non-chaos damage taken bypass energy shields. That didn't prove to be significant downside for most builds. That doesn't matter. As mentioned above, the Chainbreaker Keystone no longer causes you to lose 5 rage when you hit an enemy, but now instead has skills cost +3 rage. This is... okay, I've not played with the Chainbreaker, but I'm assuming it's a nerf. The Keystone allowed certain skills that either didn't hit, such as Bane, or skills that didn't count as use, such as Totems or Mine, to completely bypass the downside. Yes, so you're no longer going to be able to do this as a miner without any drawbacks. Okay, that's good. That's a nerf. Hardened Scars no longer grants Fortify during life. Grants Fortify while recovering life from a life flask. That's a massive Pathfinder nerf. That's a massive Pathfinder nerf. That's an insane Pathfinder nerf. That's a ridiculously insane Pathfinder nerf. That's ridiculous. What? What are they thinking? Like, here is the thing, right? In order... Okay, excuse my language, but this is fucking retarded. The notable was granting Fortify too easily to any character that could maintain uptime on a hallowed hybrid flask with the enduring prefix, okay? In order to have 100% uptime on a boss fight, let's say, right? Because while clearing it doesn't matter, right? While clearing it's not an issue. You can always maintain stuff while clearing, right? But on a boss fight, that's where it matters, right? Like on a boss fight, like in order to have 100% uptime on a hallowed hybrid flask, what you needed was, number one, you needed a shit ton of duration. This is actually the build that uses that, by the way. You needed a shit ton of duration, okay? If you look at the flasks here, I have this one. You needed a 26% quality from Halog Bench, okay? And you needed a shit ton of duration. Here we have how much flask effect modifier, charges used, one recovery. Why doesn't it show? Why doesn't it show the duration here? I think it shows in the calculations, right? Calculations, mana life, other avoidance, degen, ailments. Can I somehow see the flasks here? It's hard to see the flasks, but you needed a shit ton of duration. You needed to have like a belt as well with that, right? You need to have like a belt, 20% reduced charges used and 20% increased flask duration. This is not easy to get on a belt that also has like chaos damage or elemental damage with like also life and also craft some res on it or something like that. It's really, really difficult to get those two mods together and have a good roll on a belt that is not just that, right? So you needed to have a like important stats on a belt taken, and you needed to have multiple cluster jewels. You needed to be specific ascendancy as well. And you needed to invest in a bunch of flask nodes, and then you could have 100% uptime of that on a boss fights. And they're saying that's easy, like only one ascendancy can do that. And now it's not going to be compensated for it, right? Because the reason why Deadeye was like so limited before, right, is because it didn't have any defensive mechanic that you could pick, right? There was like 0 defensive mechanic you could pick, and it was, and Raider has also like a bit lower, but it still has a defensive mechanic, right? So we have this thing now, right? There's like dodge, like you have a bunch of avoidance, right? So avoidance or mitigation is really, really important because all of these builds can get recovery. You can get tons of recovery from many different places. Recovery is easy, but the hard part to get as a on defense, right, is like mitigation, especially for Raider and for Ranger in general. So to compensate for the fact that only Pathfinder could have that, right? Only Pathfinder could pretty much sustain the flask on bosses. No other class could do that because of the Nature's Boon. If you have like also invested in a ton of other shit, because of that, the Raider had a bunch of avoidance, right? It had a bunch of like immune to elemental ailments and like a bunch of dodge, a bunch of attack dodge, spell dodge, a bunch of chance to evade, right? So you had that and a bunch of increased evasion. And then Deadeye recently got the Wind Ward, right? Which is like less damage taken per gale force. So this is like a kind of a stacking wind dancer buff, something like that, that mitigates some of the damage that you take, right? Which kind of works similar to Fortify, but yeah, it also works like just for hits. It's very interesting defensive mechanic, and I like that it was added because finally Deadeye has some defensive options. And the only defensive option that was like worthwhile, because don't talk to me about Master Surgeon, it's horrible because it's just recovery and nothing else, and doesn't prevent you from getting one shot. The defensive mechanic, like the main defensive mechanic that would keep you alive on boss fights and stuff like that, was the Fortify, which now you cannot have that, right? Now it's like removed from the Ascendancy without compensating for it, right? So like, might as well just like remove this node, like just remove Master Alchemist and give me some defense here that I can pick instead of just the element immunity and other stats that don't matter because we're not dealing elemental damage as playing Pathfinder normally. So this is a kind of a stupid change if it doesn't come with anything that compensates the defense for Pathfinder. That's a massive Pathfinder nerf. You're still gonna be able to use that, I guess, while recovering the life, but the whole point of Fortify is to not get one shot. That's the whole point of it, right? Is to not get one shot. If you are at 100% health, this doesn't work. So you cannot use it to not get one shot, which means you can only get the Fortify as a reactive thing, which is just not how you should use Fortify. That's not how the mechanic helps you, right? So that is fucking massive. Like, Pathfinder just got nerfed. Like, Toxic Rain Pathfinder just got nerfed pretty hard. This is massive change. Okay, interesting changes, like huge nerfs. This is the most nerfs I've seen in a long time. Let's see, next thing. Necromancer's Essence Glutton. Notable has had the amount of mana regen when consumed corpse lower 8 to 4%. It was providing too much mana regen. That's true, it was insane. I wanted to make a build around it, just didn't know what exactly because of just this being super insane. So that makes sense that it's nerfed. Necromancer should not be best at everything, you know. Necromancer should be best at minions, but not at like every other archetype, I guess, right? Like mana archetype and stuff like that, it shouldn't be the best. Primal Aegis from Elementalist now takes 75% from 100. The Aegis effect went out too strong in the Elementalist rework. No, it hardly does anything. It hardly does anything. If you have they actually played this? I played Elementalist. I played like 3 different Elementalist builds. If you have this, you do. If your character is like fairly squishy, right? If you don't stack many other defensive mechanics, picking up this node, you don't even notice the defensive change. Like, you don't even notice becoming more tankier or anything. Like, you still take almost as much damage. It's not very noticeable. The changes that are OP are all the other ones. This is actually the weakest of all the reworked nodes. That's very, very weird, but that's interesting. So that seems like they're not addressing. Yeah, this is weird as fuck. Like, the Hardened Scars nerf is so dumb. That is so dumb because this hurts the variety of classes, right? Like, imagine the hardcore meta, right? Imagine the hardcore meta when everyone doesn't play Slam Champion. Imagine, right? Like, everybody's still gonna play Slam Champion because the Fortify effect has not been nerfed. The Fortify on Champion has not been nerfed. The armor, the energy shield, armor and evasion on Champion has not been nerfed. They're not talking about Champion at all. So it's still gonna be the go-to hardcore, like, or gauntlet or whatever. Like, if you wanna not die, you're still gonna have to play Champion Slams, and that's gonna be the best build forever. And the meta is just gonna be even more stale. Like, you wanted to try Pathfinder because this was a ranged class with a bow that could get Fortify. Forget about it. Like, now you're getting fucked. Now you don't have a defensive mechanic. Now you have to play Deadeye if you want to have a defensive mechanic on a ranger. That is very weird that they wouldn't nerf the most like tanky Ascendancy, just breaking the game and being unkillable. But oh no, Pathfinder is too tanky, man. It's like too many people are winning gauntlet races with Pathfinder. It's too tanky. Sorry, it's too tanky. One Ascendancy with a lot of investment could do something. No, we can't have that. We can't have you specialize in something and then invest into it and then have a reward for it. That is weird as hell. That is weird as hell. So overall, there are some really, really good changes in this, but there are some very, very questionable changes as well. So definitely the corrupted blood thing is gonna be fucking nuts. It's gonna be ridiculous. They're not nerfing they're not nerfing damage over time multipliers on cluster jewels or anything. They're just nerfing the skill effect duration, which I guess is kind of a nerf to the consecrated blood, the corrupted blood, because the corrupted blood has a duration. It has like initial and then secondary duration, which you could extend through skill effect duration. So that is getting a little bit nerfed, I guess, preemptively, but it's still gonna be broken as fuck. We're gonna see a lot more Deadeye, a much less Pathfinder, and we're gonna see a lot more Duelist. Like we're gonna see Gladiator being played a lot, and we might say like Bleed Champion played as well. Like Gladiator and Champion in hardcore are gonna be very, very strong. And then Deadeye is also going to be much stronger than Pathfinder was before. Not for everything, like not for Toxic Rain, right? And stuff like that. Toxic Rain, damage-wise, Pathfinder is still going to be the best because nothing beats the scaling of Pathfinder. But there will be other options defense-wise. The things that they're not addressing is like Elementalist, Necromancer, and Occultist being basically the best ascendancies for everything that isn't like hardcore melee slams. So they're not addressing that at all. Seems like they're only nerfing the particular skills which they didn't like, which actually those are correct skills, but to nerf, like I feel like Blade Vortex, Blade Blast, Toxic Rain as well, General's Cry apparently, and Carrion Golem and Vitality definitely deserved a nerf. Frostbomb, Wave of Conviction, I like that they had such a benefit. So Frostbomb nerf, will that affect my build much? The Necromancer one? Not really. I mean, if it gets nerfed to 10%, then I guess I'm gaining a socket, so I can use something else in that socket. I can have something stronger because I can have like Convocation in there. Yeah, so that might actually end up being like net like zero, like net neutral. So very, very interesting. The Flesh and like massive amount of nerfs, like in general, just huge amount of nerfs. But there are definitely things that are getting getting through, right? That are still not getting nerfed. So Summoner is gonna be definitely very, very good start. A Miner is gonna be very, very good start. Elemental Hit, very, very good start. Might as well like try something like Elemental Hit Deadeye or Elemental Hit Raider. I think Elemental Hit Raider is gonna be a pretty good start as well. So if you're looking for like starter builds, right? Like Elemental Hit Raider should be good. Elemental Hit Hierophant Totems should be good. Cold Dot Trickster Occultist should be good. Anything Elementalist will be good. Just not Carrion Golems. Bunch of Summoner builds are gonna be good as well. Not BV anymore. Toxic Rain being nerfed, we'll have to see the numbers, but you're leveling mostly with like Caustic Arrow and then you can do something else, probably like Elemental Hit. And then a bunch of bleed builds are gonna be good, right? A bunch of melee builds are gonna be slightly stronger or just as strong as they're now. Like Champion is absolutely busted and they're not talking about it. They're not so the big disappointments for me are not talking about Champion and Champion being allowed to be like the go-to hardcore ascendancy forever without any changes, which is boring as hell, and it's gonna be just like the same thing over and over this league. So hardcore players are gonna be kind of bored of that, I think, because like Champion Slams once again, Champion Slams once again, every league Champion Slams. So that's kind of annoying because they're nerfing like the this is what I'm talking about. Primal Aegis from Elementalist makes you too tanky. Excuse me, you're too tanky. 75 damage per passive, 100, no, excuse me, you're too tanky. You still die in one hit to everything because you can't now use Fortify and you can't now use any other thing because these mechanics have been gutted for non-melee. Sorry, you're too tanky, you can't be allowed to exist. Champion, nothing to see here, move along. Like Oh my god, okay. Yeah, that's it. Very interesting changes. Let me know, guys, what you think about these changes in the comments below. Tomorrow, I'm gonna also do the same type of video for the patch notes, so we'll see how the numbers actually look like. Thank you guys for watching and see you next time.